Making headlines for this week of November 28th, false flag Ferguson. Questions and suspicions arise as to the nature of the drama in the after effects of court ruling to not indict officer. U.S. guilty of controlling Ukraine. Hacked documents appear to highlight U.S. involvement in controlling Kiev government and hurting the people. No news is good news. OPEC ruling claims to not be sending a message to anyone, but reading between the lines shows something else. And Van Allen belts. NASA probe supports evidence of a very specific field of energy around the planet.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. Although it has taken a bit longer than other false flag events for people to start calling out the flaws, it does appear that there may be evidence to support the belief that a false flag event has been staged in Ferguson. Or not. I have to admit, I'm not sure what is going on in Ferguson. I was hesitant to lead with this story this evening, but it appears to be one of the bigger headlining stories for the week. The mainstream media is hyping the grand jury result to not indict police officer Darren Wilson in the shooting death of an unarmed black youth, Michael Brown, 18 years of age, last August the 9th. Since that time, there have been varying degrees of confusion as to what is really taking place there. The Epoch Times reported the following on November 24th. A grand jury has decided not to indict Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson in the death of Michael Brown, the unarmed black 18-year-old whose fatal shooting sparked weeks of sometimes violent protests. St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney Bob McCulloch announced the decision Monday evening. A grand jury of 9 whites and 3 blacks had been meeting weekly since August 20 to consider evidence. At least 9 votes would have been required to indict Wilson. The Justice Department is conducting an investigation into possible civil rights violations that could result in federal charges. This appears to be close to what the mainstream media has been reporting. However, there are cracks already starting to form. On November 27th, Gordon Duff of Veterans Today, offering a commentary on the events in Ferguson, wrote the following. Alex Jones has this one totally right. The whole thing is staged. You have no idea how much it pains me to write this. What he fails to consider is that people he is closely affiliated with, and this is Duff talking about Jones, are those responsible. Who knows if he figures it out? He might actually say it. You can never tell. I can tell you this much. Ferguson is an attempt to burn the Obama presidency. It is staged by the GOP and Israeli lobby, the aftermath at least, as a way of playing the race card. Only the Zionists and the GOP walk away stronger. Only they gain when America bleeds, like they did on 9/11. Like Duff, I'm not a fan of Alex Jones and his style. I also have my suspicions about the sources he is connected to, although I wish him well on his journey as a human soul. The website, allnewspipeline.com, posted a clip of Alex Jones alleging that Ferguson is a beta test for an upcoming civil war. On November 26th, however, information started to come out that there may have been something funny going on with the grand jury ruling. Judd Legume, writing on the thinkprogress.org website, stated that on Monday, prosecutor Bob McCulloch announced that a grand jury had decided not to indict Wilson, the officer who killed Brown. But that decision was the result of a process that turned the purpose of a grand jury on its head. Justice Antonin Scalia, in the 1992 Supreme Court case of United States versus Williams, explained what the role of a grand jury has been for hundreds of years. It is the grand jury's function not to inquire upon what foundation the charge may be denied, or otherwise to try the suspect's defenses, but only to examine upon what foundation the charge is made by the prosecutor. As a consequence, neither in this country nor in England has the suspect under investigation by the grand jury ever been thought to have a right to testify or to have exculpatory evidence presented. In contrast, McCulloch allowed Wilson to testify for hours before the grand jury and presented them with every scrap of exculpatory evidence available. In his press conference, McCulloch said that the grand jury did not indict because eyewitness testimony that had established Wilson was acting in self-defense was contradicted by other exculpatory evidence. What McCulloch didn't say is that he was under no obligation to present such evidence to the grand jury. The only reason one would present such evidence is to reduce the chances that the grand jury would indict Darren Wilson. As Justice Scalia explained, the evidence to support these complete defenses, including Wilson's testimony, was only included by McCulloch by ignoring how grand juries historically work. There were several eyewitnesses' accounts that strongly suggested Wilson did not act in self-defense. McCulloch could have, and his critics should say should have, presented that evidence to the grand jury and likely returned an indictment in days, not months. It's a low bar, which is why virtually all grand juries return indictments. But McCulloch chose a different path. The website addictinginfo.com ran an article by Nathaniel Downs, which indicated that there was an alleged link between the prosecutor and Officer Wilson's defense fundraiser. Downs writes that in addition to his duties as the county prosecutor, Robert McCulloch is also the president of the Backstoppers Incorporated, an organization used to fundraise for the men and women in uniform in both Missouri and Illinois. And in August, his organization was affiliated with a t-shirt drive featuring a picture of Missouri and the statement, "I support Officer D. Wilson," which was set up to raise money for Darren Wilson's defense fund, as well as the Backstoppers. Downs continues, when this tie was first revealed, Backstoppers stated they had no affiliation with the sales, but due to how it was set up, they could not determine what donations could have been from the anonymous operator. Regardless of the situation, there now exists an argument that prosecutor Robert McCulloch was in a conflict of interest in the case. That he proceeded anyways should tell us of the ethical standards by which he operates and how valid his prosecution before the grand jury is. Now, we need to have an investigation on Prosecutor McCulloch to discover if this is an isolated incident or something more widespread. So already, there appears to be suspicion about how the ruling was brought about. The mainstream media seems to be reporting that violence is breaking out. Other sources have reported no significant violence. The family of Michael Brown has apparently asked people to not be violent. There have been reports of some of the black community of Ferguson who were standing in front of buildings to protect them from vandalism. Reports are also surfacing of crisis actors that have been used at this event also. A YouTube video, which will be in the show summary, presents an argument that crisis actors were used, although it may be inconclusive. RT reported on November 28th that Officer Wilson will be leaving the police force, but that Wilson wants to leave on terms that are as positive as possible. Wilson claims that by staying, he would be endangering his life and those of his fellow officers. If it is true that this is a false flag staged event, this could merely be the excuse to get Wilson out of town. As it is getting too close to airtime, I was unable to dig more deeply into the nature of the false flag allegations, although perhaps over the coming week, more information will come to light that may help bring this event into greater clarity and understanding. In the show summary, I will post some links to video information that I was unable to prepare in time for tonight's newscast. I apologize for this. However, the links may offer some information for those resonating with the events unfolding in Ferguson. One video is from MSNBC outlining the mistakes made by the prosecutor, and the other is a YouTube video looking at the testimony offered by Wilson. For now, there is at least probable cause to question the events that have been taking place in Ferguson. Is this another Aurora, Colorado? or a Sandy Hook, or a Boston Marathon? So far, the answer appears to be definitely maybe. In other geopolitical news, in Ukraine this week, reports are surfacing along with documents which are apparently showing the extent to which the U.S. has been involved in controlling and ultimately destroying Ukraine and its people. CVN received a link to a website called Cyber Berkut. On November 25th, the group posted on its web page a claim that they had gained access to documents of Vice President Joe Biden through an assistant while he was in the Ukraine recently. According to this webpage, we, Cyber Berkut, have already warned against inadmissibility of the Washington's interference in internal affairs of our country. Moreover, we repeatedly claimed our rejection of Kiev authorities' anti-national policy, which had put Ukraine in dependence from the USA. During a two-day visit of Joseph Biden to Kiev on November 20th and 21st, we gained access to confidential files of the State Department that had been stored on an American delegation member's mobile device. Today, we are ready to acquaint Ukrainian citizens, the USA, and the world community with the documents that uncover the real volume and direction of American aid to, quote-unquote, settle the Ukrainian crisis. After examination of just several files, there is the impression that the Ukrainian army is the branch of U.S. armed forces. The volume of U.S. financial assistance amazes with its scale. They also show the highest level of degradation of the Ukrainian armed forces. Besides, thousands of dollars go on personal accounts of military personnel and used by certain officers in personal needs. What will the American taxpayers say? Documents signed by Kiev and foreign authorities speak for themselves. The first posted document shows what they claim is the most surprising information: the Ukraine Naval Command asking its foreign masters to sponsor Ukrainian officers during military exercises headed by the Pentagon on the Ukraine territory. All in all, there are about 11 pages of documents presented by this group, some in English and some in Ukrainian. Information submitted by Tyler Durden to the Zero Hedge website on November 25th about the release of the hacked documents states that it has been half a year since it was first revealed that the U.S. has been sending non-lethal aid to the Ukraine. Recall that it was in early June when Obama announced he had approved $5 million in body armor, night vision goggles, and additional communications equipment for the Ukrainian military. Since then, the topic of whether or not to arm the Ukraine army in its civil war against the separatist eastern region has been a hot topic as recently as today, when Voice of America reported that U.S. Vice President Joe Biden has condemned what he calls Russia's aggression in Ukraine, but stopped short of saying the United States will provide Ukraine with lethal aid. The White House nominee to fill the number 2 position at the State Department has said the United States should consider giving Ukraine lethal military equipment. However, as lately has been a recurrent theme, the Obama administration may not have been exactly forthright with the public or the facts. At least that is the conclusion based on hacked documents released earlier today by the Ukrainian hackers group Cyber Berkut, which reveal that despite assurances to the contrary, the U.S. has in fact been providing substantial lethal aid to Ukraine's armed forces. The hole just keeps getting deeper and deeper as the global cabal just can't seem to keep anything secret these days about their actions and their plans. And this, I might add, is a very good thing. It seems that Sweden's recent move towards officially recognizing Palestine in a desire to set an example for the rest of Europe appears to be wearing off on several countries. The Daily Star of Lebanon picked up a story by Agence France-Presse on November 23rd reporting that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned Sunday that France's parliament would be making a grave mistake if it recognizes a Palestinian state in a vote on December the 2nd. Recognition of a Palestinian state by France would be a grave mistake, he told reporters in Jerusalem. RTE.com, in its version of the story, quoted Netanyahu as saying that the state of Israel is the homeland of the Jewish people, the only state that we have, and the Palestinians demanding a state do not want to recognize the right to have a state for the Jewish people. The French vote is symbolic, but still powerful enough in that it follows the Swedish vote, a Spanish vote, a vote from the UK, and votes by at least 7 European Mediterranean countries to recognize Palestine, and further blazes the trail for other countries to follow. 3 days earlier, on November 20th, Michael Young, writing in the Lebanon Daily Star, wrote the following about Israel. Doubtless, it was a shock to many Israelis that the Spanish Parliament recognized the state of Palestine. Well, sort of. On the day that 2 Palestinians attacked a synagogue in Jerusalem, killing 4 people. But even if the parliamentary resolution was a watered-down version of an earlier proposal, Israeli officials should read the writing on the wall. They are losing the battle of narratives in their conflict with the Palestinians. Israeli anger at their passage suggests that officials in Israel grasp the underlying message. Israel is increasingly seen as the problem, not as the willing participant in a 2-state solution with the Palestinians, so that parliaments throughout Europe feel justified in pushing it in this direction. The Israeli response has been stupidly arrogant. The Israeli Foreign Minister, Avigdor Lieberman, wrote on Facebook that the Swedish government must understand that relations in the Middle East are a lot more complex than the self-assembly furniture of IKEA that they have to act with responsibility and sensitivity. Yet Israel itself has for decades failed to show any real understanding of, let alone responsibility for, or sensitivity to, the deep changes in the Middle East, or the repercussions of its perennial crushing of Palestinian aspirations and abuse and degradation of the Palestinian people. Young also adds that Netanyahu has continued to say he believes in peace, but the reality is that his policies and conditions have made peace virtually impossible. Less and less is the international community willing to go along with this charade. Israel is facing a dilemma of significant proportions, and its skill at batting away any and all protests against its policies only makes matters worse. It simply offers no realistic end game with the Palestinians, and everyone knows this. Until most Israelis agree, they can be sure that their future holds only more violence. So it seems that the initiative taken by Sweden appears to be catching on, and international pressure is building upon the Israeli leadership at this time. May the true Jewish people, the honorable and peace-living people who do not follow the Zionist agenda of their leadership, find their collective voice and begin to stand up, speak, and act with integrity in service to humanity and our planet. Of course, the same could also be said for the honorable and peace-living Canadians who choose to not follow the Zionist agenda of the Canadian leadership as well. In financial news for this week, the irony of this week's leading financial story is that no news, in this case, is not only news, but it is potentially very good news. On November 26th, it was reported in the BRICS Post that in remarks made to the media the day before a critical OPEC meeting in Vienna on the 27th, Saudi Arabian oil minister Ali al-Niami appeared to indicate that his country would not take any measures or change policy as oil prices continue to fall. He appeared to be reiterating an earlier statement made by OPEC Secretary General Abdallah al-Badri, who said market determinant factors were sound. Reports have indicated that oil prices have fallen about 30% since June. This may not seem like news, and by itself, maybe it's not really news. However, there appears to be a deeper story. With more, we start first with this report from RT.
A tense atmosphere and emotions running high accompanied a meeting of the world's leading oil producers, and it resulted in OPEC leaving production just as it is. The reaction was swift on the markets, with the price for black gold immediately on the slide again, down to a 5-year-old low. RT's Murat Gaziev is in Vienna and joins us live, and now, Murat, rarely has nothing happening been such a big story. Give us the low.
Well, our first hint as to what had happened came when the Gulf ministers came walking out of the summit, smiling ear to ear, when just a few hours before they had gone in visibly quite agitated and wearing frowns, and the journalists, hungry to find out what had happened, what they had decided on, quite virtually mobbed them in a bid to get their answers, and the police got involved, and it got quite rough. But I can tell you, not everyone was happy. The Nigerian minister, who I spoke with just before the summit started, and who told me, who professed alarm of the collapse of oil prices, she said with a blank face that they had reached a consensus to do absolutely nothing. And in this case, it seems the minority beat out the majority. In this case, again, the Gulf states, the rich Gulf states, who have the $2.5 trillion saved up, they can weather this price storm quite easily. But the poorer states, the poorer OPEC members, they will find it hard to do so. They depend on oil revenues to get by. Their budgets are dependent on oil revenue. So there's more pain ahead for them. In the hours during the summit and straight afterwards, oil fell by $2, and it's predicted to fall even further now.
International oil economist Mamdouh Salameh believes that the decision was pushed through by Saudi Arabia, which wants to kill off the U.S. shale industry.
Saudi Arabia is playing with fire. Furthermore, they hoped that the sliding price will kill the U.S. shale oil production, and that will antagonize the United States, which is the protector of Saudi Arabia. Shale oil production, to produce a barrel of shale oil, you need a price ranging from 70 to 80. Some efficient producers can live with $70 a barrel. So Saudi Arabia thinks that if the price slides to 70 or below, it means it will undermine the shale oil production in the United States. But sooner or later, the price will get back and start to rise, and the shale oil production will go back to producing oil in America.
The RT article quoted OPEC Secretary General Abdallah Salem al-Badri as saying that we are not sending any signal to anyone. We are just trying to have a fair price. However, as you heard moments ago, the accusation has already been made that OPEC may be trying to shut down the U.S. shale manufacturing industry. Here is where the story starts to get complicated, and I admit I am not sure I can tell you right now exactly what is going on. Here is what I think may be going on. We already know that a global shift away from the U.S. dollar has begun to happen. We know that currently the U.S. dollar is the global reserve currency and the currency in which oil has been valued up to now. Reports have indicated that many countries have begun moving away from the U.S. and are alleged to be moving towards partnerships with the BRICS alliance of countries. The countries that supported keeping production at current levels, even though it is dropping in price, does in fact appear to be sending a very direct message to certain circles. The general message is that they are trying to take pressure off the global economy. The hidden message appears to be a preparation for a move away from the U.S. and from the U.S. dollar, which also means that this cuts into the profits of the global banking cabal and its controllers within big oil, the petroleum industry. The accusation made that this is an attack on the U.S. shale industry may very well be a valid point. However, what the speaker did not comment on or acknowledge is the vast damage and dangers that are posed by fracking in attempts to release this product for removal from the ground, and the dangers that it has been posing to residents who have had oil coming through their drinking water taps, for example. In this second report by Press TV, the suggestion is offered about a potentially new structure to price oil away from the US dollar.
After hours of crucial debate, OPEC announced that it will not change its output quota. The member states only decided to meet again within 3 months to discuss a possible production increase. Before the meeting, several delegates followed Saudi Arabia's leading, favoring a hike to lower oil prices. They claim the move is to cool off oil prices and take some pressure off the world economy. Other members, however, believe that OPEC's production quota is in line with global demand and that the market currently faces no crisis.
We have enough supply in the market. There is no shortage whatsoever, even though with the absence of one country. But as of today, we are not in a crisis. I have no doubt in my mind if the OPEC would see that there is a crisis in the market, they will take a decision.
OPEC's decision comes as its actual output exceeds its production ceiling. Their output is an estimated 26.15 million barrels daily, about 1.5 million barrels above the overall daily OPEC production target agreed 2 years ago. But even that spare production seems not enough for some of the members. Saudi Arabia, which backs prices of around $80 a barrel, indicated that it's ready to up production unilaterally to close to 10 million barrels a day. OPEC, that currently produces around 40% of the world's crude, is facing a particularly complex mix of tensions both in the market and in the region. Unrest in Libya and Yemen threatens to destabilize larger oil-producing nations like Saudi Arabia. Besides, the oil ministers remain extremely wary of the global economic outlook, particularly the effect of a weak US dollar on their oil revenues. Some of the member states propose to price oil against a basket of currencies rather than the dollar. They believe a weak dollar pushes down the value of the dollar-dominated oil revenues. With all this going on, we have to wait and see how OPEC's new stance will affect the oil market and the global economy.
For those who are unfamiliar, there are certain countries that are completely dependent upon oil revenues for their national budgets. There will very likely be some suffering in a few countries. However, what is not fully known is the influence to which the global banking cabal has been controlling numerous oil-producing nations. Many conflicts over the past 2 decades at least have been for the control of oil and other resources in the targeted countries. Of course, the mainstream media has not reported this. Countries that are perhaps heavily under the influence of the global banking cabal will try desperately to keep the price of oil high so that there is more money to pay locals, while certainly other funds are skimmed off the top to pay US and cabal-controlled companies for their illegal take of the profits. So it seems, for now, to spell very good news for those who are keeping an eye on the shifting geoeconomic paradigm. It is also good news for environmentalists in the US trying to stop fracking, and it is also good news for environmentalists and Indigenous tribes in Canada in their battle against the puppet Prime Minister, Stephen Harper. Jason Bowman, who has commented on stories relating to our Indigenous tribes in the past, has commented to CVN this week that the media in Canada appear to be rather quiet on this no news story. This may very well hint that this announcement by OPEC does not go very well for Harper at all, as he has been very aggressively pushing his agenda to get oil from the Indigenous lands where this oil resides. Harper is facing legal battles on several issues, including land settlement issues, and the Indigenous bands or tribes are beginning to unite together against Harper, empowered by the growing sentiment across the country that this dictatorial leader must be removed almost at any cost, while the people still have any voice left. As just mentioned, the OPEC countries, or at least several key countries, appear to be making moves towards the BRICS alliance. RT reported on November 24th that The BRICS Bank marks a major step to de-dollarization and a new monetary system. It should replace the Western-dominated predatory casino scheme that has contributed to world wars and economic terrorism. This, according to former World Bank economist Peter Koenig. A BRICS system would offer a healthy alternative to the highly indebted and defunct dollar system where money is printed at will, Koenig said in an interview with Assam Ismi of the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Koenig was also quoted as saying that it is high time that the currency of worldwide theft, abuse, and exploitation, the US dollar, financial instrument for endless wars and economic terrorism, be replaced with a currency of peaceful endeavors that respects national sovereignty, a currency that works for the people, not for the elite few. Currently, according to Koenig, 6 U.S. banks control more than 60% of all banking assets. The current system has been controlled by the U.S. Federal Reserve and the Bank for International Settlements, or BIS. Also, according to Koenig, a new monetary system should replace this dollar-denominated predatory casino scheme that has, in the last 100 years alone, largely contributed to and benefited from 2 world wars, impoverished our planet socially and environmentally, Koenig said. This system is at the verge of a larger abyss than the Depression of the 1930s. Koenig believes that BRICS, which is actively leading a massive effort of de-dollarization, can become a viable alternative to the Western economic system, and that Washington is afraid of losing the dollar's monopoly on the global stage and is trying to destabilize the situation in the BRICS countries. For example, by slandering the government of Dilma Rousseff in Brazil for corruption and high debt, or depreciating the Russian ruble by fraud and currency manipulations. Based on the current official membership, the BRICS countries represent almost 30% of the global gross domestic product and about 45% of the global population, making it a very promising alliance for global change. It was back in September when Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, told RT that Google works like the U.S. State Department.
And Google ID is an in-house State Department that Google runs. Its functions are essentially the same as the U.S. State Department to make alliances with various people, to bring together activists and security generals and so on, bring them together under Google ambit and create various forms of networking, and even in some cases actively intervene with different governments to try and destabilize them.
With the steps that numerous European countries are beginning to take to distance themselves from the U.S., there may now be indications that European politicians may be pushing for the breakup of companies that are known to have ties to the various intelligence agencies of the U.S. One of these companies is Google. An article released by Agence France-Presse, appearing on the Daily Star news page in Lebanon, reported the following. The European Parliament voted overwhelmingly for the breakup of Google on Thursday in a largely symbolic vote that nevertheless cast another blow in the 4-year standoff between Brussels and the U.S. internet giant. In a direct challenge to Google, the members of the European Parliament assembled in Strasbourg approved a resolution calling on the EU to consider ordering search engines to separate their commercial services from their businesses. While Google is not directly mentioned in the proposal, the California-based search engine is clearly the target. The resolution passed with 384 in favor and only 174 votes against. The European Parliament has no power to launch the breakup of Google, but the move introduced by 2 senior lawmakers is further indication that the mood in Europe toward the company has soured. Google has become a lightning rod for critics in Europe on a broad range of issues, from privacy to the protection of national publishers. We wanted to give a strong signal to the European Commission, but also to the U.S., companies like Google and to citizens, said Belgian Member of Parliament, the socialist Mark Tarabella. Since 2010, Google has been under investigation by the European Commission in response to complaints that its search engine, the world's biggest, was squeezing out competitors in Europe. Google and Brussels have also clashed over the so-called right to be forgotten. The EU's top court ruled last year that people had a right to ask search engines to delete results involving them after a period of time. EU privacy watchdogs issued guidelines on Wednesday calling for the company to apply the right to be forgotten rule to all search results, no matter the country. For now, the ruling only applies to European domains, such as google.fr and google.de, and users can turn to other domains to find unmodified information. It is worth highlighting the final two paragraphs of this particular article. The article writes that in a statement Wednesday before the vote, the U.S. mission to the European Union said it had noted with concern the Parliament resolution. It is important that the process of identifying competitive harms and potential remedies be based on objective and impartial findings and not be politicized, a spokesman for the U.S. mission said. The key phrases in these two paragraphs are noted with concern regarding the resolution taken by Parliament, and remedies be based on objective and impartial findings, not to be politicized. The fact that this U.S. mission was concerned that a parliamentary body, which is supposed to be the voice of the people, is a statement as to what the true agenda is for the U.S. in this particular case. The fact that the spokesperson also said that findings were not to be politicized raises the question as to what the other option is, which is commercialized and therefore controlled by the corporations and the elites. In our current democracy, it could be argued that in an honorable and ideal world, decisions might be politicized as they should be reflecting the will and the direction of the people. Sadly, this is not the case, however, as the political processes and the politicians themselves have surrendered to the powers of those with money, control, and influence. However, to focus on the good news, the fact that a parliamentary voice has spoken up for this is a positive first step. The downside, however, as mentioned earlier, is that the European Parliament is the body that has taken this action, and it is, unfortunately, and perhaps strangely, not the body that has the real decision-making authority. This would be the European Council, the unelected body of the European Union. As mentioned moments ago, Canada's Indigenous tribes, or bands, are challenging on numerous different levels Prime Minister Harper's regime in Canada. As people learn about the criminally fraudulent banking system and how it is protected by the criminally fraudulent commercial system of law, many people and groups may decide they want to do something, but they do not want to do it alone, or they do not want to be the first ones. It is always the most courageous who are willing to take the risks who end up creating a trail for others to follow later. Such may now be the case with the Indigenous bands, or at least a few of them within Canada. An article by Sheila Pratt in the Edmonton Journal on November 27th has reported that Cold Lake First Nation is the second band in Alberta to lose federal funding as it resists a new federal law requiring public disclosure of all band finances. For clarification, it is my understanding that the commercial legal fiction entity is the term First Nation, and that the sovereign free human entity is commonly referred to as a band, or perhaps a tribe. The article continues. Band councillor Walter Janvier said he supports the position of the Onion Lake Cree Band that the federal government cannot require transparency of confidential business information. Cold Lake has provided an audited statement of the federal funding it receives, and all salaries are public, said Janvier. But the 2,500-member band will not give out confidential information on banned corporations or details of private benefits agreements with oil and gas companies. We have drawn the line and said no, says Janvier, a councillor at Cold Lake, 300 kilometers east of Edmonton. We have developed our own stream of revenue and they have not helped us on any of that. So when it comes to revenue from gaming or our construction companies, it's strictly not government business. Pratt also adds that the Saw Ridge Band near Slave Lake and the Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation are also listed by Aboriginal Affairs as being among 52 non-compliant bands across Canada. The Onion Lake Cree Band currently has a lawsuit pending against the Government of Canada. According to the article, the Onion Lake suit alleges the new law discriminates on the basis of race, asking for disclosure other Canadians do not have to comply with. The lawsuit also says the transparency requirements put First Nations at a competitive disadvantage if they have to disclose confidential business information in making business deals. An article on the Aboriginal People's Television Network website, APTN, reported on November 27th that Aboriginal Affairs Minister Bernard Valcourt says the department will immediately cut funding and begin court action against any First Nation that refuses to comply with his government's transparency law. Valcourt told reporters his department would be withholding funding for non-essential services like chief and council salaries, administrative costs, and economic development projects. He also said the department would begin preparing the groundwork for court action against the non-compliant First Nations to force them to reveal their audited financial statements online. The deadline for complying passed Thursday at midnight. First thing we're going to do is withhold funding. The process starts today, said Valcourt. The court order is a legal matter. In the next few days, we will take steps to seek court orders against those who willfully refuse to follow the law, or rather, the commercial rule that has been given the force of law. The question to ask here is who created these rules and that were given the force of law, and where and when did everyone give their consent to those rules? A Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, or CBC, news article on November 26th noted that the government told CBC News that as of Wednesday at 5 p.m., 61 First Nations had until midnight to comply with the First Nations Financial Transparency Act. Nearly 90%, 521 out of 582 First Nations have already done so. This would suggest that many of the bands across the country are either directly controlled or influenced by the corporate fiction entity known as the Assembly of First Nations, or the leadership in these bands are sadly naive in not standing with their brothers and sisters in resisting the controls being implemented by the Harper regime. The irony is glaring that the regime of Harper should seek to enforce transparency upon the Indigenous bands of Canada, while he and his government are notorious on their own for their lack of transparency on countless issues themselves. Perhaps this is the rebirth of the Indigenous version of the Occupy protests, a movement called Idle No More. Perhaps many will begin to peacefully question and maybe begin to resist the influences of criminally created rules being enforced upon people without their knowing and democratic consent. In general news, the Pope has come forth again with another message about humanity and the choices that are currently being made. What is interesting to note are the varied headlines that are being used to describe the story. Gulf News led their story with the headline, Doomsday, Pope Francis warns man's greed will destroy the world. Yahoo News in the UK went with Doomsday Pope warns man's greed will destroy the world. And several other sources also used the word doomsday attributed to their version of this particular story. An internet search of headlines for this story noted that while some used the word doomsday, Others focused on the term man, as in man's greed or the greed of man. That may have been the term actually used by the Pope, although this is unclear. However, it appears only one news source in the search results used the term humanity, as opposed to using the term man, and this was RT. RT reported on November 21st that Pope Francis has launched his latest attack against the excesses of capitalism, saying humankind will bring about the end of the world unless we rein in our rapacious greed. God always forgives, but the earth does not. Agence France-Presse cited the Argentine Pope as telling the Second International Conference on Nutrition in Rome, organized by the UN Food Agency and World Health Organization in the Italian capital. Take care of the earth so it does not respond with destruction, he warned those in attendance at the three-day conference, which included representatives from 190 countries. I'd like to add a small observation at this point, as there are many who take words of journalists more literally than others. The Pope notes that God forgives while the earth does not. Of course, in the space of oneness, there is no separation between what some call God, or a divine creator source, and the planet. There is no separation between the divine creator and each of you listening. Our planet, as a living, sentient, energetic organism, is merely responding to what has been done to it. If you do not treat your body well, it is not that your body does not forgive you. It will forgive you by returning to its natural state of health if one chooses to give the body the nutrients, the rest, the exercise, the clean air, and clean water it needs to function optimally. The language in this used by the Pope may have been based somewhat in fear for the purposes of making a point to those who are unable and unwilling to think in terms of a higher consciousness. To offer an example of how people in global positions of leadership might be able to handle a situation a little bit better, the article closed with the following. Due to his often condemnatory stance towards the present economic world order, many critics have labeled the 77-year-old pontiff a Marxist. The Pope, however, countered he was practicing true Christianity as expressed in the Gospel, and that communism had merely stolen Christian ideals. In your minds, is there perhaps a way that this could have been better phrased in order to receive a more positive response and reduce the possibility of a defensive attack? Instead of responding to the initial accusation of being a Marxist by saying that communism had stolen Christian ideals, which is more of a defensive reactionary response, perhaps the Pope could have said something like, would it not be better to approach this discussion first from the perspective that we are all human, regardless of our differences, and work towards what we share in common instead of focusing on polarizing our differences, which have led to the current system that promotes debt, fear, and separation. We are all one. Should we not be seeking to respond first to the basic needs of humanity? Perhaps you can think of another way to approach situations where humans are being polarized against each other as opposed to working together for a common goal that benefits all of humanity and our planet. Several days later, the Pope spoke to the European Parliament, and Andrew Higgins, in his article in the New York Times on November 25th, reported that the last Pope to address the European Parliament, John Paul II, rejoiced at what he described as a special moment in the history of this continent in October of 1988, as communism was crumbling and Europe was drawing closer together. On Tuesday, after a break of more than a quarter century, another Pope, Francis, returned here to the same setting but with a grimly somber diagnosis. Europe, he declared, has lost its way, its energies sapped by economic crisis and a remote technocratic bureaucracy. It is increasingly a bystander in a world that has become less and less Eurocentric, and that frequently looks at the continent with aloofness, mistrust, and even at times suspicion. Gently delivered, it was nevertheless a failing grade. In many quarters, we encounter a general impression of weariness and aging, of a Europe which is now a grandmother, no longer fertile and vibrant, said the Argentinian Pope to the Parliament, in a location where speeches usually trade in platitudes or mind-numbing technicalities. Francis also said that the time has come for us to abandon the idea of a Europe which is fearful and self-absorbed. In recent years, as the European Union has expanded, there has been growing mistrust on the part of citizens toward institutions considered to be aloof, engaged in laying down rules perceived as insensitive to individual peoples, if not downright harmful. CVN gently reminds listeners to remain observant and non-judgmental as possible. Many souls that have previously been guilty of causing harm to humans and our planet are beginning to wake up, and they are seeking to find ways to make things better. The Vatican has been guilty of countless crimes against humanity. Some are making the claim that the current Pope is guilty of crimes in his past and perhaps even now. To varying degrees, we have all committed our own negative acts against humanity and our planet. The challenge now is to attempt to embrace those who appear to at least be making attempts to do something better. They may be scared about how people will react to them. Until one shows that one does not care about humanity and our planet, each soul deserves as much love, compassion, support, and where necessary, perhaps even degrees of forgiveness. In tonight's final words, I'll be sharing a few comments related to this topic. Poverty is a business. As hard as it may be for some to accept this reality, the fact is, it is merely another aspect of business. It is the same for the business of war and for the business of ill health, just to name a few. Humans are coming to understand who benefits from war, who benefits from the debts and fear caused by the criminally fraudulent fractional reserve model of banking based on fiat currencies. The following are selected excerpts from a YouTube video offering some insights on who benefits from poverty.
When we think of poverty in the third world. But poverty exists at the very heart of wealth, in the United States of America. To think of poverty as American, it is necessary not only to consider its sheer existence, but also to ask, how is poverty produced? Why does it persist? And to tackle these questions, we must in turn pose a very specific question. Who profits from poverty? A few years ago, a Business Week cover story revealed the poverty business that was afoot. Reporter Brian Groh described how ambitious corporations were targeting poor Americans, seeing profit in thin wallets. Riding the subway, Groh had noticed an ad placed for auto loans, available to those without good credit histories. But the ad had fine print, finer print, and even finer print. This is the poverty business, and what it shows us is that the poor pay more for everything. Just on auto loans in the U.S., the poor pay 50 to 60% higher interest rates than those who are well off. From Chicago to Oakland, the poor rely on payday loans and pawn shops for financial services. In the slums of India, the poor pay exorbitant rents in order to live in miserable shacks. In sub-Saharan Africa, the poor buy water at obscenely high rates. It is not just that the poor pay more for everything. It is also that such transactions are highly profitable for those selling the poor such goods and services. This is the poverty business, where the vulnerability of poverty becomes the grounds of profit for companies and corporations. Today, a new round of crises in markets has generated great interest in alternative economic models, including those that can combine poverty and profits without exploitation and predation. Take the case of microfinance. The practice of making tiny loans to the poor, especially poor women, microfinance is seen to be a poverty panacea. It has also turned out to be profitable. The dream of eradicating poverty through profit is not new. In late 18th century England, one of the most famous philosophers of liberalism, Jeremy Bentham, conceived of a national charity company where paupers would be put to work and shareholders would reap handsome profits on their investment in this company. Both poverty program and free enterprise, Bentham's industry houses never fully materialized. but their architectural design became the basis for the modern prison, the panopticon. What is striking about all of these schemes is that while profits are made on the labor of the poor, or the consumption of the poor, or the debt of the poor, they're not profitable for the poor. Who profits from poverty? Surely not the poor. What then will it take to build a pro-poor economy? In Bangladesh, one organization shows the way. The world's largest development NGO, BRAC, is known for its microfinance loans. But that is a misperception, because what BRAC is really doing is transforming how the poor find a foothold in local, national and global economies. BRAC knows that it is pointless for the poor to get microloans if they remain trapped in sheer survival and subsistence. And so BRAC insists on transforming the entire economies within which the poor must trade, in poultry, in dairy, in textiles. There's a much-quoted proverb in the world of development that I hate. Give a man a fish and you will feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. Bullshit. Do the poor really not know how to fish? Bullshit. And what good is it to be taught to fish if the rights to fish are owned by powerful landlords and if the river is polluted by upstream tyrants? And what good is it to be taught to fish if one has to sell one's fish to princely monopolies who command unfair prices? What BRAC does is simple but radical. It challenges the rules through which markets are organized. It changes the political economy of fishing rather than teaching the poor how to fish. For me, this is an innovation. An IPO is not an innovation, a financial derivative is not an innovation, the poverty business is not an innovation. A pro-poor economy is an innovation. So if I return to my opening question, who profits from poverty? I could answer it by simply stating that capitalism profits from poverty. But I want to be able to say more. For this, I must turn to what Herta Izquierdo, a brilliant artisan scholar, calls yellow capitalism, or capitalismo amarillo. Documenting the creativity of traders in the Tepito street markets of Mexico City, this project shows us how these informal markets sustain the poor. Take a look at Abel Carranza and the speaker packs he creates to sell CDs on the sidewalks and subway lines of the city. This too is innovation by the poor, not innovation for the poor. The traders of Tepito are seen as pirates. They remind us of the peculiarity of profit. While the opportunism of the wealthy is celebrated and rewarded, while the poverty business thrives on what it terms opportunity pricing, the opportunism of the poor is often criminalized. But as one of my students tweeted, when the poor have access to the same technology as those who can afford it, then piracy laws can apply to them. I do not offer Tepito's pirate traders as an example of a way out of poverty. I do not want to romanticize what is a hard life and a fragile livelihood. But the Tepito traders remind us of the difference between the poverty business and the businesses of the poor.
As we move through the currently changing times, we find increasingly more individuals who are willing to sacrifice short-term material wealth in order to share their aspects of their work in a crowdsourced format, for example. Some even share their designs, their computer codes, or their creations freely in anticipation that the universe will return to them the energies of abundance they may have shared unconditionally. In this way, people can receive, use, and contribute to various projects that will seek to empower humanity in ever greater ways while gradually reducing the influence and control of those who are enslaving humanity and destroying our planet for profit, power, and greed. In a story that is more science-related than it is technology, we look this week at revelations coming from NASA regarding a probe that has detected a protective barrier around the Earth. According to NASA website on November 26th, 2 donuts of seething radiation that surround Earth, called the Van Allen radiation belt, have been found to contain a nearly impenetrable barrier that prevents the fastest, most energetic electrons from reaching Earth. The Van Allen belts are a collection of charged particles gathered in place by Earth's magnetic field. They can wax and wane in response to incoming energy from the sun, sometimes swelling up enough to expose satellites in low Earth orbit to damaging radiation. The discovery of the drain that acts as a low barrier within the belt was made using NASA's Van Allen probes. A slot of fairly empty space typically separates the belts, but what keeps them separate? Why is there a region in between the belts with no electrons? Enter the newly discovered barrier. The Van Allen probes data show that the inner edge of the outer belt is in fact highly pronounced. For the fastest, highest energy electrons, this edge is a sharp boundary that, under normal circumstances, the electrons simply cannot penetrate. When you look at really energetic electrons, they can only come to within a certain distance from the Earth, said Sri Kanakal, the deputy mission scientist for the Van Allen probes at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, and a co-author on the paper that appears in Nature magazine. This is completely new. We certainly didn't expect that. For the listeners who have already been long aware of a field of energy around the Earth, this may not exactly be news. What may be interesting to note is that some mainstream sources have picked up on this story. A weather website based in Canada, for example, the Weather Network, is running this story on November 27th. In their article, they describe the shield as being like something from Star Trek. Where it gets a bit more interesting, again, for those who have been following this for a long time, the pictures that are being used to describe this energy and the barrier show the pattern that many will recognize as the torus. For those who know little or nothing about this, you can picture it this way. Think of a donut or a bagel. Put the Earth into the middle of this donut or bagel, and the donut represents the field of energy that is surrounding the Earth. In a few moments, we'll hear a deeper explanation. Without going into too much detail at this time, our planet is going through a very profound energetic and frequency-related shift in human and planetary consciousness right now. We have been in this wave of energy for quite some time, but as the energies move into increasing frequencies, the shifts become faster, and our perception of time also appears to be speeding up. The following audio clip appeared in the 2011 documentary called Thrive. Here, Foster Gamble and several guests explain the torus and its nature.
It turns out that in 1921, Albert Einstein got a Nobel Prize for discovering that when energy is released in the universe, there are little packets of wholeness that emerge. This pattern actually tells us a lot about how life evolves. Considering the enduring wonders of creation throughout the universe and how unsustainable so many of our human systems are, I figured learning how the universe creates and sustains life would actually be quite useful. Each of these little packets of wholeness that Einstein discovered, called a quantum, is made out of its surroundings but is distinct within it, like a whirlpool in water. These packets are always the same pattern, no matter what size, and they are surprisingly relevant to issues as seemingly disconnected as the wars in the Middle East, the global financial collapse, and how to achieve justice for everyone. We're about to explore how. Mathematicians call this pattern the torus. The energy in a torus flows in through one end, circulates around the center, and exits out the other side. It's balanced, self-regulating, and always whole. I was first officially introduced to the torus by scientist and inventor Arthur Young. Futurist Dwayne Elgin explains how the torus is the primary pattern that nature uses for life at every scale.
Evolution means to unfold, to roll out. So the question is, what is the universe rolling out? And what the universe is rolling out is self-organizing systems, and you can see this at every scale. A self-organizing system is a technical term for just a system getting a hold of itself, knowing itself, essentially. And if we go to nature, we can look at and we can see these self-organizing forms throughout. We can see it in the cross-section of an orange, the cross-section of an apple. We can see it in the dynamic nature of a tornado. We can see it in the magnetic field around the Earth, a similar magnetic field around an individual. We can see it in the structure of an entire whirlpool galaxy. We can see it in the structure of a small atom. At every scale, throughout its entire history, the universe has one single project. It's growing toruses. The universe is a torus growing factory.
The torus is like the breath of the universe. It's the form that the flow of energy takes at every scale of existence. But there's also an underlying structure in how the flow fits together, sort of like a skeleton. It's called the vector equilibrium, a term coined by one of the 20th century's greatest thinkers, Buckminster Fuller. Inspired by Fuller's visionary work, I spent decades researching the dynamics of the vector equilibrium and the torus. I became so excited by the potential of the toroidal energy form that in 1997 I co-founded a multidisciplinary think tank called the Sequoia Symposium to study the pattern and explore its applications. Our collected research convinced me that the torus and the vector equilibrium are primary patterns, fundamental to the creation of the universe at all scales. At the Sequoia Symposium gathering, I learned of inventors who claimed they were using the torus dynamic as the basis for devices that generated energy without combustion. This revolutionary development, accessing what's sometimes called zero point or radiant or free energy, is now being called most simply new energy technology.
The fact that science is now beginning to let out information about the nature of the energy that surrounds the Earth and the energy that is the basis for almost everything in the universe is a positive sign. The fact that at least a few of the mainstream media are starting to take notice is better. But as more and more humans begin to put it all together, the sooner we can all contribute to raising the consciousness and vibration of our planet where the greatest positive changes for all can happen more quickly. This will ultimately be the best thing of all for the highest good of all. A couple of other shorter video links will be posted along with the story links for those who wish to understand better the flow of this energy around the Earth. They will appear in the show summary. While on the topic of the torus and the shape of donuts and bagels, an interesting story was posted last week on RT.com about the aircraft manufacturing company Airbus. Listeners who heard the end of my newscast last week may have heard me quote Ralph Waldo Emerson, who is credited with saying, "Do not go where the path may lead, go instead where there is no path, and leave a trail." This week, it seems that aircraft manufacturer Airbus may just be doing that, at least in exploration. RT reported on November 18th that Airbus has filed a patent for a new concept plane that looks more like a Star Trek contraption than a conventional jet. The bagel plane will seat passengers in a ring, while its new body shape will allegedly minimize the aircraft's structural stress. The main reason, apparently, for the design modification is related to the pressurization of the more familiar cylindrical aircraft. The front and rear sections of the plane are apparently more sensitive to the pressurization loads, and the new design allegedly deal with this issue. According to the article, the interior will see passengers seated in a bagel-like formation rather than in neat rows, as per the traditional jet. This formation will maximize efficiency, while the aircraft's shape will reduce stress on the front and back ends of the plane. Apparently, this will also allow for a higher volume of passengers. An approximately cylindrical geometry limits possibilities for increasing the passenger carrying capacity of the aircraft, the application states. What may be interesting to note is this. Apparently, Airbus files more than 6,000 patents every year, as indicated in the article, and a few of them actually make it to production. Of all the patents filed, one may wonder why this particular modification was deemed newsworthy. According to the article, the bagel is, however, one of the biggest adaptations to the whole structure of the aircraft. It has only been more recently when ships of shapes that are not circular have been appearing in the skies around Earth. Is it possible that aircraft that are more circular in design may also be a way of slowly getting people accustomed to different shaped objects flying around in our skies, perhaps our galactic families? I'm not saying that this is the case, but it does seem intriguing that one patent out of a large number of Airbus patents featuring a design like this is starting to attract the interest of media, especially as the number of sightings worldwide are continuing to increase of objects of unknown origin. For those of you who are fed up with all the distractions on Facebook, here is an application that you may wish to explore to learn more about and decide if it is something for you. Fluff Busting Purity, or FB Purity for short, claims, according to its website, to be a Facebook customizing browser extension. It alters your view of Facebook to show only relevant information to you. It removes annoying and irrelevant stories from your news feed, such as game and application spam, ads, and sponsored stories. It also hides the boxes you don't want to see on each side of the news feed. For those who may be concerned about the safety of this extension, the website claims that it is absolutely safe. The website adds that FB Purity has been around since 2009. It's one of the top 150 highest user-rated Firefox extensions out of a total of over 11,000. It has over 182,000 happy users and has also received great reviews from big media companies, including The Washington Post, CNET, and PC World. If you need further proof FPB is completely safe, see the test result gallery. Along with the link to this story, a link will be provided that goes to that test result gallery just mentioned for those who are interested. The designers of this browser extension are clear to point out on their page that this site and FB Purity extension and its script are neither endorsed by or affiliated with Facebook. In health news, CVN has covered several stories in the past about drinking water first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, and also drinking lemon water on an empty stomach. For those who are a bit stronger, or those who know that they are dealing with various parasites in their stomach or intestines, here is another option you may wish to consider. An article on the Mind Awakened website, written by an unknown contributor from Russia, writes that, "Did you know that eating a whole head of garlic a day does miracles for your body? Garlic, a simple ingredient with amazing health benefits. It stimulates the immune system and normalizes your gut flora. But since it is so powerful, moderation is key. Garlic should be treated like medicine and not overconsumed. Growing up in Russia from an early age, I learned that garlic was to be my first aid choice, whether I was getting sick or just as a preventative measure. Nobody ever questioned its powers. Garlic is a powerful natural antibiotic. It kills a very large number of different bacteria. Garlic is widely used in folk and traditional medicine for the treatment of many diseases and ailments. The cultivation of garlic started about 5,000 years ago. It was used by the Romans, Assyrians, Egyptians, Greeks, Jews, Arabs, and many other cultures. Pythagoras called garlic the king of spices. The earliest known references indicate that garlic was an important part of the daily diet of the Egyptians. An Egyptian manuscript from that period includes 800 drugs, of which 22 were made with garlic. The author goes on to claim that scientists have found that when you consume garlic on an empty stomach, it will only increase its power, making it an extremely powerful natural antibiotic. It happens because bacteria is exposed and cannot defend itself from succumbing to its power. Garlic can apparently be used to replace the use of antibiotics. The author notes that garlic is composed of nitrogenous substances, sodium, potassium, selenium, calcium, magnesium, silicon, sulfuric, phosphoric acid, vitamin C, D, B, phytosterols, extractives, and essential oils. Additionally, garlic is rich in phytocides, such as allicin, which is formed by the mechanical destruction of plants, that is, the crushing or grinding of the cloves of garlic. According to some researchers, allicin has a strong bacteriostatic effect, which helps cure infections faster. Garlic can also fight fungal infections, which makes garlic a much more valuable medicine than that of many of today's antibiotics. The article lists 10 health benefits that garlic is alleged to offer. The list of these are in the article, and the link will be in the show summary for this story. As well, a link to the benefits of drinking water first thing in the morning may also be meaningful for some listeners. As a gentle suggestion, in North America especially, it seems many prefer to have a cold drink with their meals. Keep in mind that any liquid will dilute the digestive chemicals created by the body to digest food. Diluting the mixture can slow down the digestion process and perhaps contribute to the buildup on the walls of the intestines. If you really must drink during a meal, it is advised to drink only warm liquids. The benefit of warm liquids is especially so if one is eating foods with any kinds of oil. Cold liquids will thicken the oil and make digestion slower, while warmer liquids will keep the oils softer and flowing in liquid form. While on the topic of oils, we look now at an article appearing on the worldtruth.tv website in an undated article. The benefits of using coconut for cooking are becoming more known now, as coconut oil apparently does not break down the way other oils do in extreme heat. This article, however, is focusing on coconut oil as a replacement for toothpaste. According to this article, a natural ingredient can do wonders to your oral health. This natural ingredient is coconut oil, better known as magic oil, that is full of miracle powers. What makes it unique is that it is not only useful to fight tooth decay, but is known as a killer that crushes the yeast Candida albicans from your mouth. The article also adds that though natural health professionals have been suggesting coconut oil for decades, there is enough of research that proves this natural tooth remedy as well. Conducted in the Athlone Institute of Technology, some researchers from Ireland examined the after effects of digested and natural coconut oil on some common bacteria strains existing in the mouth. They came up with some amazing findings. The coconut oil could effectively reduce the majority of bacteria strains and was also proven to be a good source to eliminate Candida albicans from the mouth. Since this harmful yeast Candida albicans comes into existence because of the intake of excessive sugar and processed foods, it is crucial to get a solid solution to get rid of this yeast. And yes, coconut oil is proven to be the right solution to this. In the report, scientists have reported that this natural oil can be one of the best alternatives to chemical dental products that include added fluoride and different sulfate chemicals. Now, the article does not remind people that the best way to eliminate this risk of Candida albicans is to just simply stop eating the kinds of foods that have sugar or are processed. However, since most are not likely ready to make a choice of this nature, this solution may offer a reasonable substitute, at least for now. The best coconut oil to use is, of course, 100% organic if possible, but also an oil that is cold pressed and unrefined. A personal practice that I have been using for over a year now is to have coconut oil with a bit of baking soda along with food-grade hydrogen peroxide. I started out with about 20 drops of a 3% food-grade hydrogen peroxide concentration. People may react differently to combinations, so it is always better to start slowly and gradually increase if you feel guided to do so. Just before I get to my final words for this week, I'd like to share an uplifting, heartwarming story for this week. As we get closer to the holiday season, I will try to find and share a story that captures the true human spirit during these challenging but also exciting times as our planet and humanity continue to change. This story is beneficial because the people behind this story are working to create other projects, similar projects, to help people who are truly in need of help and who give selflessly to others. The producers call their show Prank It Forward. Although it is set up as a prank against someone, the individual is always the recipient of something meaningful that recognizes the individual and helps the individual in his or her world.
Meet Cara Simmons, a hardworking housekeeper and single mother of 3 who's never had a day off in her life.
Cara is an amazing person, amazing sister. She's selfless, she works hard.
She gives her all to her work and her family.
She cares about us very, very much. Not just us, but like anybody. If anybody needed something, she'll be there.
She'd give you the shirt off her back, really, honestly.
She's steadfast.
I love my mom this much.
Cara has struggled in the past few years with health concerns and financial concerns, always trying to make ends meet.
Cara has been in and out of the hospital battling exhaustion, and the medical bills have stacked up, making it hard for this single mother to pay her rent, let alone get a well-deserved day off. We've got a whole day of surprises in store for Cara. We've outfitted this house with hidden cameras to capture Cara's amazing day. For once, this housekeeper will not have to lift a finger. And we're going to top it all off with an incredible surprise gift that not even her loved ones are going to see coming.
Cara's here, camera's rolling.
Okay, so Mary Jo told her this is a very important client. What Cara doesn't know is that they're actually working for us.
It's just so funny because I cleaned already. But I'm so glad you're here because we're throwing a huge party for my boss tonight. There's still a ton left to do. This is Manny Slomovitz.
Hello, how are you? Hello, how's it going?
World-renowned chef.
Ooh, I'm like a girlfriend.
Thank you.
First up, I need you to taste, test, and freeze the meal that we're preparing for later.
You have a lot of experience with tasting food?
So,
well, I'm going to put it in front of you. You just kind of roll from there.
Okay.
So what's your favorite thing to eat?
Spaghetti.
Spaghetti?
I have 3 kids at home, and they all like it.
This meal's going to be a big step up from spaghetti.
This is a little California salad to start off with. It's got Tristan lobster meat. We flew it in about 2,000 miles off the south coast of Africa. So it's about $400, $500 for the lobster. Super expensive.
I just want to save it. It's so nice.
Plow right through it.
I'm not sure what I'm doing here, but it's like I wish somebody else could experience this with me. They're not going to believe me.
We got about 6 more courses to go.
Chef Slomovitz proceeds to take Cara through a feast of taste tests through various main courses and also a large selection of dessert. Cara is absolutely blown away at the selection and the cost of the food being provided. The woman whom Cara believes is her employer returns after the meal.
How is everything going?
Great.
Are we all set for tonight, you think?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cara, will you get that? Sorry, Cara, will you get that, please?
Yeah.
Hello, we would MAL.
Oh, massage. Okay,
It would
great.
be awesome if we could warm up our hands. In other words, we'll catch cramps and everything, and that's bad.
But please tell me you won't mind being massaged by these 2 gentlemen. We're doing a massage and reflexology station tonight. It's a big...
Like I think it's my birthday. Okay.
Go for
Are you
it.
going to help us? Oh, thank you so much.
So, Cara is offered a 1-hour massage by 2 professional massage practitioners. The prank employer has to pull her away, however, for the next set of gifts.
Just I hate to break up the party. I need her upstairs.
That's good. I think my hands are pretty warm.
So I have a bunch of clothes up here that I need to get rid of. But if you want something, set it aside for yourself for later. I mean, what else am I going to do? I'm going to get rid of it and try them on. Have a seat. I mean, those shoes are at least $250. And this stuff all looks like your size. This it?
We actually went out earlier with her sister Glow to pick all this out just to make sure she'd love it.
With new clothing to try on and not realizing that the clothing is actually for her, the stage is being set for the biggest gift to Cara. The host of the show tells the audience it is his time to enter the scene. He is playing a mover, and his job is to deliver boxes to this address. Her employer tells Cara to go ahead and start unpacking. However, to Cara's stunned surprise, she finds items from her house inside the boxes.
Where'd you get these from?
Let's set these down. I'm sorry, was there a problem?
These are my items.
They're your what?
These are my items for my home.
Are you sure?
Yes.
It says here that these items are for the woman who lives here in this house, Ms. Simmons.
Yeah.
Yes, Miss Simmons is my boss.
Yeah, it says here Miss Cara Simmons.
My name, but...
That's your name?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so this must be your house.
No.
Cara Simmons.
I am Cara Simmons.
Yes, you are the resident of this house. This is your house.
No, I just... No.
Maybe you don't understand. We actually have some things out in the truck that might clear it up. Why don't you come with me just a minute, ma'am, please? Maybe I should clear this up for you. My name is Greg Benson. I'm an actor, and I host a show called Crank It Forward, where we do good things for people who deserve some goodness. Glow and Mary Jo decided that you needed a day off to just relax and have a great day. So that's what we tried to do today. We didn't want you to work an ounce. But what they don't know, and what your family doesn't know, is that this is actually your house now.
Oh my God!
We have renovated this house, we've rebuilt it, and we've paid for it, and these are your keys.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!
Well, good for you.
There was an additional gift that Cara received, and this was an all-expenses-paid trip to Mexico with her sister. There are so many in the world who are the example of unconditional giving and serving, who go unrecognized, and as the world changes for the better, through people doing unconditional acts of kindness and love and projects that truly help and recognize those in need, we can raise our collective vibration that much more to co-creating that world we are claiming to want to experience.
Pop open some Barefoot Bubbly. To Cara, who is so deserving of this amazing gift, to Break.com, and to our friends at Barefoot Wine, who have made all of this possible and are committed to making the world a better place. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you, Bill.
And in this week's final words, I have spoken in the past about the creation of the new earth that we all claim to want to be a part of. I have mentioned the importance of co-creating this new earth from energies of love, compassion, and forgiveness, and not energies of revenge, fear, greed, jealousy, or punishment. I have also spoken about global change starting at the local level and how important it is for each community to take responsibility for its own sustainability and stop relying on everything from multinational corporations. Each community has the potential to provide all its own needs, its own resources, while also dealing with its own waste. The less that needs to be shipped and transported to a community, the less the waste that is created. The powers that have controlled and enslaved humanity have been trying to keep communities from supporting and sustaining themselves, and fueling separation has been one tool, along with debt and fear. As humanity co-creates this new earth, and as we grow, what story will we choose to tell the future children? Will we say that we created this new earth through a violent revolution that saw the persecutions and deaths of all those responsible for human enslavement and planetary destruction? Will we say that we created this new earth from an energy of love for all life, and this force was supported by energies and entities beyond earth because the time had come for a new, peaceful, and harmonious existence to be experienced upon, within, and beyond our planet? Will we be able to look into the eyes of the future children and tell them that the peace the world is now experiencing came about by courageous souls who lived and died by being the peace they wanted to see manifest upon our world? I would like to take a look this week at some excerpts from a channeled message recently received by John Smallman from the entity that most in the world would recognize as Jesus. I realize that there will be some listeners who do not accept that people can receive messages from anyone, let alone a celestial or galactic entity. Although there is increasing evidence to show the existence of telepathy, there will be those who are not yet ready to take that next step. I honor and I respect this. I am not asking anyone to believe in the existence of channeled messages. What I am inviting people to do, however, is to keep an open mind to the message that is being shared. Listen from your heart, and regardless of whether or not you question the source, ask yourself if the words and the energies in the message resonate with you and who you are choosing to be in this current moment of now. Here are parts of what Jesus shared through Smallman. The old order is crumbling away rapidly, and with them the structures that have kept humanity tied to the treadmill of work and debt. I feel your strong doubts, but I assure you that amazing developments have taken place, and what they entail will very shortly be widely published for all to see. The tsunami of love, as you have been told, is extremely powerful and has enveloped all in its loving embrace, and the inevitable results of being held in that embrace are soon to be revealed to an astonished world. Its power is gentle, but totally pervasive. None have escaped its enthusiastic and uplifting influence. All hearts have opened to it and been inspired. Love is now the predominant energy being experienced and felt all across the entire planet. Despite the mainstream media reports of escalating conflict in many parts of the world, political, military, religious, and financial, this is not the real situation at all. There is a desperate effort being made by those who have been in control of the world's resources, the political powers, industrial powers, military powers, and controllers of Earth's energy resources, to convince you that nothing has changed by using the mainstream media, which they own, to distribute their messages of alarm, threatening impending doom unless you support them. But due to the freedom of expression and the flow of information through the World Wide Web, these efforts are failing dismally. The mainstream media will not, for much longer, be playing the tunes that the dark ones order them to play. The controllers have finally lost control. They know it, and they are stunned. They truly believed that nothing would change unless they ordered it, and they are now finding daily that this arrogant presumption is utterly wrong. It is very difficult for them to understand because they have held the reins of power on earth for so long that they believed themselves invincible. Hidden in darkness, manipulating and controlling nations, multinational organizations, political parties, and religious establishments, they believed that no one could threaten them, let alone unseat them. They are now realizing that their moment has come and gone, that their deceit and corruption has been uncovered and publicized, and that no one will raise a finger to support or protect them from public notoriety as their crimes against humanity are made known to all. However, this is not a time for condemnation and punishment, because those who have abused you and who have abused your trust in them are themselves very severely damaged souls who need your compassion. Not to offer it is basically an attempt to replace them with others who are apparently of the light and who will judge and condemn them to the delighted cries of the masses, and in doing so, take their places. If this happens, their light will fade rapidly as the power they suddenly find themselves holding corrupts them absolutely. But this will not happen. The way forward, as always, is in love. Anything that is not in perfect alignment with love is unreal, corrupting, and corruptible. As the old order falls, rejoice, but do not attempt to replace it, no matter how seductive and enlightened the offered replacements appear to be. A very wise man some years ago wrote a book called Small is Beautiful, and on earth this is a truism that has been neglected, ignored, denied, and ridden over roughshod with disastrous results for humanity and the planet. Now is the time for communities to come together to resolve all their local issues in a wise and loving fashion, with loving intent, honesty, and integrity on all sides. This can be achieved very easily indeed, because all issues are local issues. Release your beliefs that others of greater intelligence are needed to organize and run human society in a safe and civilized fashion through the power which you invest in them when you mistakenly give them yours. All that they will do, as they have done in the past, is establish a system that grants them privileges, claiming them as their right for establishing and maintaining order in society, which they insist will collapse without their presence and wisdom. This is a fallacy, and history shows this very clearly. But humans, through the ages, have happily given their powers away as they do not wish to bother with their communal responsibilities, being either too busy with their own selfish agendas or too busy eking out a living because in their impoverishment all their efforts and energy were required to do just that. This is no longer to be the case. All will be provided for most abundantly with everything they need to maintain a comfortable and satisfying lifestyle, thus freeing them up to develop their individual creative talents for their own enjoyment and for the benefit of all. The time has come for you to truly live free and follow your bliss. When the interminable stress and anxiety of survival, as presently experienced by the vast majority of humanity, is removed, people will start to uncover an amazing array of creative talents that most of them were totally unaware that they possessed. That is what the Golden Age is all about, living in perpetual peace and security, because the energy field in which you are all totally and eternally enveloped is love, which always provides for you abundantly. In that state of utter and unrestricted freedom to be yourselves, your talents will blossom as you discard the masks you felt you had to present to the world to be acceptable to it. You will realize that you are acceptable, infinitely acceptable, and that has always been the case. And your joy will be boundless as you interact freely and creatively with all your brothers and sisters in a grand and ongoing, extremely creative celebration of life. It has taken me a long time to let go of my desire for revenge and punishment of the global cabal. I am almost there. I have reached a space in my own awareness where I am willing to give members of the cabal a choice. They can either resign and move away to a quiet island and live out the rest of their lives without punishment. They can come forth and tell the truth of all that they have been involved in and make some form of restitution to society and the world and begin working with the rest of humanity for a new earth. Or the third option is to continue their futile and insane attempts to keep power and risk whatever consequences may be necessary to remove them from power as lawfully and as peacefully as possible. I have reached this point personally because I am just so eager for the changes to begin that I don't really care what has to be done to achieve this. There are too many people suffering worldwide and who are being held back from their highest potential because of the actions and inactions of this global cabal. If true global peace, health, and prosperity can come sooner by letting them off the hook to go somewhere and hide, I think this is a price I am now willing to pay for the highest good of all. What are you ready, willing, and able to choose in this moment of now? Create a wonderful week until our next moment of now. So, that is the Unfolding Consciousness news around the world this week. Cosmic Vision News is a part of the Enlight Radio group of programs. Links to stories used in this broadcast are published in the show summary on the blog at cosmicvisionnews.com, on the CVN Facebook page, also on Twitter, Google+, FaceUni, Ello, and LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey West, reminding you that the universe is always speaking to us, sending little messages, causing coincidences and serendipities, reminding us to stop, to look around, to believe in something else, something more. Until our next moment of now, stay grounded in love, hold the vision of light and peace in your heart, and keep your eyes to the skies. Disclosures unfolding all around you. Namaste.